Hello and welcome back to the SAT Masterclass by ECIE. Today is our day 4 and we're finally starting our math section. Altogether in our math section, it is going to be divided into 4 different categories. Our first section is going to be algebra. The second section is going to be trigonometry and geometry. A section is called advanced maths itself, but most of its content is going to be about our percentage ratio and proportions and radicals and other stuff like that. And along with that, we also had data representation. So altogether, in the first algebra sections, we're going to be dealing with a lot of algebraic equations and a lot about linear equations and inequalities. In our second section, which is trigonometry and geometry, we're going to be dealing with circles and triangles mostly, and obviously the trigonometry section of triangle. And along with that, in the mathematics section, like I mentioned previously as well, we're going to be dealing with radicals, percentage, and stuff like that. And in the data representation section, we're going to be dealing with standard deviation, means, medians, and along with that, we'll also deal with scatter plots and how different data are represented in graph forms and in word problems as well. So this is how we're going to be moving on. And today, firstly, we're going to be starting off with the algebra section. And we have two different topics on algebra today in our day 4, which is linear equations and inequalities. Our दो sections are not new. हमने I guess 6 the hinwada linear equations and inequality पढ़े रहेको. So they kind of move hand in hand, and we'll be dealing with some questions related to them. So our first is going to be linear equations, and over here we're going to learn how to solve system of linear equations, and along with that system of linear equation in word problem format and also the graphical problems. So in my experience as a student myself, I think solving system of linear equation and word problems tend to be a bit easier as long as you understand how to deal with the words itself. But graph of linear equations is something that we did not practice as much in school, so we have to use a bit of tips and tricks and a bit more of our logic behind it. So first of all, we need to understand what system of linear equation is, and I guess that is one of the major problems with Nepali students. I'm like answer, but we don't know what we're dealing with at all. So in this case, system of linear equation basically means two linear equations, and we have to use these both equations to come up with the answers of the variable. So now we have to find out the value of x and y depending on the equation that we're given. So that is called solving a system of linear equation. And also, what is the difference between linear equations and inequalities? So linear equations are any kind of equation जिनमें से is equals to sign use गरेको हुन्छ, like over here as well. Whereas in inequalities, like the word inequality आफैले भन्छ, they're not equal. Instead, we're going to use signs that we already know: less than, more than, less than equals to, more than equals to. So over here, dealing with them isn't hard in system format, but when it comes in graphical format, we might have to, change up a few things and understand a bit more. So the subtopic that falls under this is going to be, like I mentioned before, graph, basic solving of the system, and solving the same system but in word problems ko format ma. So we need to understand how graph works and how we have to look at a graph. So over here we're given a certain graph which is y is equals to 2x minus 1. Keep in mind y and fx are interchangeable and they will be interchanged throughout the questions in your SAT as well, but they mean the same thing. So the first thing that you have to understand is what is slope, and I guess this is something we all already know since what's the matter. So from the right hand side to the left hand side of the x-axis, जति पनि angle बनाउँछ त्यसको tan inverse is going to be हाम्रो value of slope. Now, how does the slope deal with our graphical form of the linear equations? Like mentioned over here, the first bullet point, a line that trend upwards from the left to the right has a positive slope. Like in this case over here. So from the left to the right, if it's increasing or is in upward, then it is a positive slope. Similarly, if the line trends downward, so if it is moving like this perhaps, then that would have had a negative slope. And a steeper the line, the larger the magnitude of the slope is. We know that. So steeper vanivitike, something that is like this or like this, the more angle that it covers, the larger will its slope become. And another formula that we will be using quite a lot is this: slope is equals to y2 minus y1 by x2 minus x1. Over here, when 2 points are from the line itself is given, x1 comma y1 and x2 comma y2, then those points are going to be used to find out our slope. And here are two things that we'll just have to note and which will make it easier for us to solve these types of questions. One is slope of a horizontal line is 0. So any line that is horizontal or is parallel with our x-axis, numerical slope is always going to be 0. Similarly, if the line is making a 90-degree or is perpendicular with the x-axis or is parallel with the y-axis, then the slope of that line is going to be undefined, which basically means infinity. So the slope is not counted at all. Now moving on to parallel and perpendicular lines, something we have been studying for the longest period of time. Any line which when intersecting gives us 90-degree is going to be a pair of perpendicular lines, and if two lines never cross each other and have the same slope, those lines are called parallel lines. Over here, it's also stated parallel lines is in the plane have the same slope. In the xy plane over here, have the same slope. Parallel lines do not intersect unless they also completely overlap. So neither do they ever intersect, but they only ever intersect, which is not even really intersecting, is when they're overlapping each other. So all of their points are with each other, and the other one is going to be perpendicular lines. So the slope of these lines, in case of parallel lines, slope of m1 is equals to slope of m2. In case of perpendicular lines, slope of m1 is equals to negative form of m2. This is something we have studied for the longest period of time as well, which could also mean something that हमने इसको ना पढ़ा है, we studied like this, but of course it means the same thing. Now moving on, we'll just try out one of our examples. So which of the following is the graph of the equation y is equals to minus 1 by 2 x plus 3. So this is hamro y-intercept or slope-intercept formula, which is y is equals to mx plus c, where m is going to be hamro slope and c is going to be our constant or y-intercept. So first of all, हमने slope निकालना पड़ेगा. In this case, they have said that the slope is going to be negative. So from left to right, it is in the downward motions. So it's not going to be B, but it's not going to be C, just on the basis of that. Now moving on, we have over here our C intercept, which is positive. So the line that we're given is going to cross the y-axis in positive 3. Over here it crosses in positive 3. Over here it crosses on negative 3. So D is going to be our right answer. Like I've mentioned even in the English section as well, but specifically in math section, it's really important to use the elimination method to deal with any kind of questions. So over here as well, I use elimination method. So C and D got cut out because the slope are positive, whereas our equation में slope negative they have also. And then when comparing it with Amro slope intercept formula ने C or y intercept का value is +3, तर A का value or y intercept is -3. When C A cannot be our answer either. Therefore, finalize गर्दाखेरि D is going to be our right answer. Now we have another question over here. Line L in the xy plane passes through the point -1, -2 and 2, 7. Which of the following equation describes the line L? So over here we have two different points of a line given, and we have to use those points and put them in our slope intercept formula again, which is y is equals to mx plus c, to get our right answer. So we need the value of m to begin with, and like we practiced, y2 minus y1 is equals to x2 minus x1. So using this, we know y2 is equals to 7 minus plus 2 by 2 plus 1 is going to give us 9 by 3. Therefore, our slope is going to be 3. And throughout all these, positive 3. Over here, C is the only one which has the positive 3 as a slope. Therefore, C becomes our right answer. So yes, there are times where you can use elimination, but in solving equations like these, it is easier to just find out the answer by solving it. So now moving on to system of linear equations, and in this question it's something we have learned throughout our whole life using substitution and elimination method. We are going to be given duita linear equations or अनि त्यो दुईटा linear equations मा x र y को value or any other variable को values undefined or हुँदै हुँदैन. And now by using these two equations हामीले त्यसको value निकाल्नुपर्छ. And we have studied that there are two methods of solving them. One is substitution and one is going to be elimination. So using the substitution method, over here, we can see the first equation is 2y is equals to x plus 7, and the second equation is y is equals to, sorry, x is equals to y minus 4. So, our first step is going to be एउटा variable either x or y, we have to keep it separate from the other. So we have to segregate it from the other equation. Easily over here we can see that in our second equation, x लाई पहिले छुट्टिएर आइसकेको छ, so it's easier, but just in case we have to substitute it and दुवै equations मै नै सँगै राखेको छ भने we can just use for equation 1 y is equals to x plus 7 by 2. So in this way we can segregate, but since we like to keep it easier and since that means that our question is going to be solved quicker, we're going to keep it यतिकै नै. So x is equals to y minus 4, त्यो x को value we're going to substitute in equation 1. That is going to give us 2y is equals to y minus 4 plus 7, or 2y is equals to y minus 4 plus 7, or 2y minus y got the heading y is equals to 3. So the value of y is 3, and now we can use the value of y and substitute it again in equation 2 to give us x is equals to 3 minus 4 is equals to minus 1. Therefore, x is equals to minus 1, y is equals to 3. This is how we use substitution method. So here, our goal when solving a system of equation is to reduce two equations with two variables down to a single equation with one variable. Over here, we substituted the value and kept it. Therefore, your equation बन्यो जुनमा एउटा मात्र variable छ. When there is only one variable, then we can manipulate the equation and get the basically the answer of what that variable means. In this case, what does y mean, or what is the value of y? So the steps in like 4 steps that I just did is, first isolate one of the two variables in one of the equations. It's already been isolated for us. Substitute the expression that is equal to the isolated variable from step 1 into the other equation. This should result in a linear equation with only one variable, like this. Solve the linear equation for the remaining variable, and we got the value of y, and use the solution of step 3, the solution that we got in step 3, to basically find what the solution of the first equation would have been. And that's exactly what we did. So this is not something new, but it's just a revision for everyone. Now moving on, we have our elimination method, and in this case, instead of using two different solutions, we're just going to be dealing with them together. So it's always better in SAT to write the question again because it tends to make it a bit easier. Of course, we need to put one variable in one side and the other variable in other side, so which basically means y is equals to x plus 4. So let's cut this over here, and these are our first and our second equation. So over here we know that extra x is same, so when we use minus sign we can easily just cut it out. So x and x gets eliminated, hence the elimination method. Now y is the only thing remaining, and 7 minus 4 is equals to 3. So y is equals to 3, and now we can use that value of y and put it in this equation. So x is equals to 3 minus 4, and we get minus 1. So elimination method in like the simpler questions can be a bit easier, but when you're dealing with harder questions, we might have to multiply it with other factors to get a common answer, like we have done in school time as well. So basically, the step over here are four steps as well. First, you have to identify a pair of terms in the system that have both the same variables and the coefficients with the same magnitude. If necessary, rewrite one or both equations so that the pair of the terms have the same variable and coefficient. In this case, x square x go, same variable wins, so there's the same variable obviously, and coefficient wins same, so which is 1. If the coefficients were not same, for example, instead of 1x and 1x, there was 3x and 2x, then we still have an x left. So again, the equation would not be complete kiniki. We will have both the variables present. Though a variable present wakawailama, we cannot solve the equation at all. So it's always important to make sure that at the end of the day, your equation one of the say that equation only has one variable, like over here, only one variable, so which is y. Add or subtract the two equations in the system to eliminate the term identified in step 1. So basically we have done that. This should result in a linear equation with only one variable again, and then solve the linear equation and then put the equation value again in the other equation. It's simple, it's something we've already done, so I feel like this question is just a revision and we can easily solve it in exam. And now we have intersections and number of solutions. So basically, when we are given a certain graph and we have certain lines in it, for example, this and this is intersecting in one point. So the value of x and y will only have one value of x and will only have one value of y because it's only intersecting in one point. But when it's intersecting at two different points, दुईटा पोइन्टमा intersect गरिरहेको छ भने x को value पनि दुईटा हुन्छ, y को value पनि दुईटा हुन्छ. And what are those conditions? I think we've all studied it before. These are quadratic equations found. Or how are the graphs of quadratic equations? In quadratic equations, graphs are always parabolic. And this is something we have studied a lot. Even in 11 and 12, we have studied parabola a lot of times. So when a parabola is given like this, no matter where it cuts, horizontally, vertically, it's always going to cut in a certain point. So duita point must say it will always cut. And the two intersection points are going to be our answers. Basically, the number of intersections is equals to number of solutions. Now moving on to what has been said over here. When two equations are given, it means two lines are being represented. Two lines can either intersect just once or infinitely many times. So, like I said, duita line ko beech ma se there is always only either one intersection or they're going to have infinitely many intersections. And what is the condition for infinitely many times? They have to literally be the same line, which means that they have to overlap each other. In that case, or maybe or is that it only intersects one time. So that is hamro number of solutions for a two linear equations given. The number of times the line intersects shows the number of solutions an equation has. That is the number of value of x and y variable have. I've already explained this. Now, how can we use the equation to know the number of solutions by looking at the system of linear equations? Here I'm taking a simple example, which is 2x plus 4y is equals to 16. Comparing it with Hamlet slope intercept form, we know slope is going to be 1 by, so let me just like factorize this as well. X plus 2y is equals to 8, or y is equals to 8 minus x by 2, which gives us, or y is equals to minus 1 by 2x plus 4. So we have over here minus 1 by 2, sorry, and 4 as our slope and our y-intercept. So over here, how we know that y is equals to 3x plus 6. I'm just factorizing the first one, and then we have the second, y is equals to 3x plus 6. We can see literally from our eyes नै कि यो दुईटै इक्वेसन नै सेम छ भनेर स्लोप पनि सेम छ and intercept पनि y-intercept पनि same छ, which means that these both lines are pretty much the same and they overlap each other. Therefore, they have infinitely many solutions. Now, moving on, we have two other examples. We can see that over here, the c or y-intercept is the same. So you might think, oh, the equation, okay, but we have to look at the slope as well. The second, the slope is different because m1 को case में it's 3, m2 is minus 3. Therefore, they only intersect once. So they have the value of x and y. There's only one value for each of them. Now moving on, we have the other equation. Over here, y is already simplified in the first one. The second one, let's simplify this. Y is equals to 14 divided by 2 means 7x plus y gets divided over here, so it gets 49 by 2. So in this case, neither the slope and neither the y-intercept is same. So that means that they will definitely intersect each other. So that is how you're supposed to know how many number of solutions you have. So instead of going on and solving equations, एकचोटि अर्को, you just need to evaluate what they will be in y-intercept form, find out the value of m and c, and then use that information to know if they intersect once, if they never intersect, or if they are literally the same line, therefore infinitely intersect. Now we have another question. In the system of equation, there is a constant. For what value of dash does the system of linear equation have infinitely many solutions? Now dash base is actually meant c. We have a constant called c over here. And c का value से के हुँदाखेरि चाहिँ the whole system will have infinitely many solutions. So now we have to recall कुन केसमा चाहिँ infinitely many solutions हुन्छ. When the slope is same plus when the y-intercept is also same. So we have to have a system that does both conditions. Now let's simplify both these equations properly. X is equals to minus 3 plus 7x, which will give us 3 plus cy minus, 8x. And then our other, or even better, just already put it in the slope intercept form. So that is going to be 8x minus 3 by c is equals to y. So this is our first equation already simplified. And our second equation is 3x minus y is equals to 3 by 2 minus x, or 4x minus 3 by 2 is equals to y. So both these equations have been turned into their simplest form. Above, we know that the slope of the first equation m1 is going to be 8 by c, and the y-intercept is going to be minus 3 by c. Over here, we know that the slope is going to be 4 and y-intercept is going to be minus 3 by 2. Just by comparing the y-intercept itself, we have minus 3 by c and minus 3 by 2. We know that c value should be 2. Therefore, this is how you solve this question. This is one of the harder questions from linear equations, and as long as you know what are the conditions for it to be infinitely many possible solutions or just one solution, that will basically give you a clear guide to how to solve these types of questions. We have one more solution, but I feel like you guys can do it yourself, and I hope you guys try this question out as well. So I'll leave it for you all. So system of linear equation को word problem. We have already done हाम्रो system of linear equation and graphical questions. This is our last slide, which are going to be word problems. I feel like students they tend to get a bit worried when there's a lot of words and there's a longer paragraph, किनकि त्यो प्याराग्राफलाई इन्टरसेप्ट कसरी गर्नुपर्ने नि बुझेको हुँदैन. And I feel like that is also the hardest part in linear equation को word problems. Apart from that, the solving part is pretty easy, but as long as you know how to interpret it properly, you are guaranteed to get a good score on this section. So real world scenarios are going to be given to us, which has to be interpreted in the linear equation form. So we have to form linear equations based on the word problem given to us. The main issue in this type of question isn't the solving of the system of linear equation, but the process of interpreting the sentence into the equation. Like I said, this is the biggest issue, especially for newbies, because हाम्रो एसएटीको क्वेसन गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ they tend to use a bit more complicated wordsहरू अनि data that are एकदमै नै हुन्छ नि in a larger scale, so it tends to mess with our minds a bit. So how do I write the linear equation? The first step is to identify the subjects, and then the second step is going to be to allocate the quantities to its designated subjects. So so C being the number of correct answer, उसले एउटा करेक्ट आन्सर गर्दाखेरि 100 points plus हुन्छ. अनि I being the incorrect answer, every time she answers a question wrong, उसको 25 minus 25 marks चाहिँ minus or deducted हुन्छ. So this is what we need to understand. त्यसपछि के भनेको छ, total number of questions she answered, which is C plus I is equals to 30. Over here, let's suppose C, the correct number of questions they answered is X, and the number of, or you know what, let's not even do that. It's better to keep it like that. Nee? So let's C be the correct answers and I with the number of incorrect answers. So the number of correct answers plus incorrect answer is going to give us 30. These are the answers say गरेको छ. त्यसपछि we know that her total score is 2125, which basically means that the number of correct questions she did into the number of marks you get for one correct question. 1 गर्दाखेरि 100 छ भने C एउटा क्वेसन आन्सर गर्दाखेरि C into 100 एउटा हुन्छ, प्लस एउटा क्वेसन इन्करेक्ट गर्दाखेरि 25 डिडक्ट हुन्छ भने I एउटा क्वेसन आन्सर गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ 25 डिडक्टेड हुन्छ. Since it's in minus, therefore 100C minus 25I is equals to, sorry, I is equals to 2125. So the two equations that we have come up with is C plus I is equals to 30 and 100C minus 25I is equals to 2125. We have now created two equations, therefore we have made a system of linear equation. After this step is done, this particular step is pretty easy. We just have to use either elimination method or substitution method to get the right answer, and I'll leave that section to you guys. So our next topic for today is going to be inequality, and over here we're going to be dealing with questions related to word problems and graphical questions as well. So obviously word problem garda garda ne we will just know how to deal with linear inequalities as a whole and how to solve them as well. So, like I've mentioned पहिला पनि while doing linear equations, linear inequality uses signs like these. And I feel like we all already know the purpose of this. That when it comes to word problems, say, sometimes we do tend to forget which one works the best. So it's really important for you to understand different signs. Say actually ne ke भन्नु खोजेको हो. And like I mentioned before, word problems or graphical questions सँग deal गर्छ. And basically just examples of linear inequalities are as such. So moving on to linear inequality word problems, the best and the most important thing we need to know is what these different signs mean. So this sign obviously means less than or lower than. This sign would mean greater than. And over here, this greater than equals to sign means that it's either greater than equals to, or another thing that will be used in word problem says no less than. No less than भन्नु र greater than equals to भन्नु एउटै कुरा हो. So it's very important to note this down. Similarly, no more than र less than equals to भन्नु पनि एउटै कुरा हो. This will really help you out a lot doing the word problems. And then the other questions that might be asked is what are minimum values, maximum values, and a possible value. So minimum value भन्नाले चाहिँ if a certain equation is given, for example, x is greater than equals to x. एउटा equation is to बन्यो, and then the question says what is the minimum value of the system or something. Then obviously the minimum value that you can get from x is 6. Kinki any value of x other than 6 is only going to be greater than 6, right? Kinki यहाँ भनेकै छ x को value greater than 6 or equals to 6 हुन्छ. So in this case x को minimum value is going to be 6, but instead of the equals to sign, if it was just x is greater than 6, then the minimum value would have been 7. Kiniki 6 is not included in the list of values for x. Similarly, maximum value on the head say if x is less than equals to 6 भनेको छ भने the maximum value of x is going to be 6 because any other value is going to be less than 6. Also, if is equals to part हटायो भने x is less than 6 बनाउने बित्तिकै the greatest value or the maximum value of x is going to be 5 because 6 has been removed from the list of answers of x. Similarly, we have a possible value as well. That means that if the range of values of x is between 1 to 6 and x is less than equals to 6, then the value of x can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6. So any value in between can be the answer, and we can use any value that we want is to be laughing. Now, an example has been given over here. He needs at least 20 minutes to get ready. If x is the minutes it takes him to get ready, the equation we make is x is greater than equals to 20. Because we have mentioned over here that at least 20 minutes लाग्छ भनेर. And at least means greater than or equals to, like we have mentioned over here. So therefore we'll be using this sign. Now I'll be moving on to an example which will make this whole thing a bit more understandable. So over here, we can see that we have a certain example. A bottle weighs 50 grams and holds up to 2 liters of liquid. A chemist is filling the bottle with X grams of liquid ethanol and Y grams of liquid water. Ethanol has a density of 789 grams per liter and water has a density of 1000 grams per liter. The chemist wants the mass of the filled bottle to be less than 1800 grams. Which of the following system of inequalities best models the situation described? So over here, similarly to हाम्रो linear equations को word problem, we have to know which are the important information त्यसलाई कुन वेमा चाहिँ classify गर्ने भनेर. So त्यसको लागि चाहिँ सबभन्दा पहिला we have to be able to interpret the data एकदमै नै properly. In this case, we have दुईटा liquids given to us, which is ethanol, liquid ethanol, and अर्को is water. अब त्योभन्दा अगाडि we have a information that the bottle itself weighs about 50 grams and that it can hold up to 2 liters of water, sorry, of liquid. So 2 liters त्यसको volume चाहिँ hold गर्न सक्छ. अब एउटा केमिस्टले चाहिँ त्यो बोतललाई चाहिँ x grams of liquid ethanol र y grams of liquid water ले फिल गर्न लागेको छ. So x grams plus y grams को चाहिँ certainly चाहिँ फिल गरिरहेको छ. इथेनॉल को डेन्सिटी दिएको छ हाम्रो, and त्यसपछि water को पनि डेन्सिटी दिएको छ, which is 1000. After that, the chemist wants the mass of the filled bottle to be less than 1800 grams. So x grams fill गरिरहेको छ, y grams fill गरिरहेको छ भनेको छ. अनि यहाँ there is a certain part that has to be noted. Has to be less than. So x plus y भनेको x grams of liquid ethanol र y grams of liquid water स्टोर गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ त्यसको weight चाहिँ should be less than 1800 grams. But here comes the extra information, which is the bottle itself weighs 50 grams. So that also has to be cut out. When you see instead of 1800 grams, it has to be 1750 grams. This we will look on to हाम्रो given options. So A ma it is correct to our first equation. B is also correct. C and D, however, first equation is wrong. So there is no way C or D could be our answers. Now moving on to our second part, हामीलाई चाहिँ यसमा के भनेको छ भन्दाखेरि हामीलाई volume दिएको छ, liters मा दिएको छ, whereas till now we were only dealing with gram. But thankfully we are also given density. Our density relation with grams and volume चाहिँ कसरी काम गर्छ भन्ने थाहा पाउनुपर्छ. Over here it has been said ethanol has a density of blah 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 grams per liter. भनेपछि mass by volume. Therefore, density is mass by volume. In this case, we need it in volume per format ma. So, or V is equals to mass by density. यो फर्मेटमा चाहिँ हुनु पर्यो अनि के भनेको छ the holds up to 2 liters है. So we can see that throughout all of it sign त एउटै नै छ. So it holds less than or at least equals to 2 liters. अब त्यसलाई चेन्ज गर्नको लागि or liters मा निकाल्नको लागि चाहिँ we need it to be mass x gram भयो of ethanol अनि त्यसको density is 789. That is the volume required. भनेपछि we know that this is how the format should be. And your format is only present in B. Therefore, B is our correct answer and A gets cut out. And that is how you find out our answers. In inequalities, either they tell us to just find out the equations or they will give us certain graphs or we have to use the graph itself. Tara, we won't be told to just solve the question like we were in linear equations. Now moving on, how are the graphs in linear inequalities represented? So there are two ways of it being represented. एउटा dotted lines को use गरेर अनि एउटा चाहिँ straight lines or lines without any dots use गरेर. When a dotted line is used, I think we have all already studied this as well, school time pani. It means either greater than or less than this signs without the equals to sign. But when a straight line with no gaps is used, that means that it's either for greater than equals to or less than equals to sign. So we have to be careful about that. Yanira, we can see that dotted line has been used, which means it's representing greater than or less than signs. So moving on to the bullet points, if y is greater than mx plus c, y is greater than mx plus c, then the upper side of the line, your line को चाहिँ upper side is going to be shaded like over here. But if y is less than mx plus c, then lower part is to be shaded. So instead of this, talloko part is shaded भएको हुन्थ्यो, whereas dotted lines would have been used. But if they said that y is greater than equals to, then instead of dotted line, we would have had a straight line. And except apart from that, the shading part is the same. Moving on, we have another example over here. So instead of using just one inequality, we have two different inequalities. And two inequality use say now we have to find out what the correct graph is. Over here, we're just learning how to represent graphs. So let's go on with it. Our first equation over here is now let's see the sign that has been used, which is less than equals to. In the second equation, the sign uses greater than equals to. The similarity between both these signs are that equals to other part is being used. Therefore, why the lines are dotted? Why the lines are not dotted? Now moving on, in the first equation, y is less than equals to. When y is less than equals to, that means that we have to shade either the lower region, or when we can see this becomes the left hand side, this becomes the right hand side, right? So either we have to shade the lower region or we have to shade the right hand side. And then the other graph, so therefore we would have shaded this whole region. Now the second graph the sign uses greater than equals to. Therefore, we have to shade the upper hand side or the left side. Therefore, we would have shaded this. The section which is being overlapped, the shaded overlap region, is this. Therefore, our graph is to diksa vanera, we can see that. Now we have another example over here as well. If the shaded region in the graph above represents the solution set of an inequality, which of the following could be the inequality? So this is how the questions are normally asked. Over here, we know that mathiko shade भन्ने बित्तिकै y has to be greater than equals to. And also किनकि dotted lines hasn't been used. So C or D cannot be our answer. It's either A or B. Now we have to take the help of the slope itself. किनकि as we can see, the y-intercept is same in both of them. Now going on over here, let's look at the y or हाम्रो slope itself. Over here we have studied agadi pani that if from left hand side to right hand side if it's increasing, the line is in increasing format, then that is positive slope. but left hand side by right hand side by हेर्दाखेरि if it's decreasing or decaying, therefore it's a negative slope. Over here A has positive slope whereas B has negative slope. Therefore B is going to be our right answer किनकि यो left बाट right जाँदाखेरि decay हुँदै गइरहेको छ. Therefore B is our right answer.